Hey, brother, welcome to day 27 of Following Jesus. Again, I want to hope that it isn't just going to be 40 days that we follow him, but that's our special focus for this time. You know, I was just thinking about what a good little boy I was. I was compliant. I got straight A's in school. I went to church 3 times a week. I went early to shovel the sidewalks and fold the bulletins for my dad. I behaved myself. I didn't want to raise any kind of ruckus. And a lot of that was just because I was shy. But I was a compliant young man. And I learned how to keep the rules. I learned how to stay out of trouble. I learned how to be competent. But that competence, that compliance, can easily take a toxic turn. A couple of things it did for me was I felt like I was very comfortable and righteous because I didn't drink or smoke or chew or go to movies or carouse with the other kids. I didn't tell dirty jokes. I didn't swear. There's a lot of things that I didn't do, but I was fairly silent about my testimony as to why. I also learned that if I could become competent at things, if I could find ways that I was better than other people in some way, that I could just kind of look like I was doing it easily, but I could also be kind of smoldering in pride. And I was a perfect candidate for what was happening in the New Testament because the people who didn't follow Jesus were not just the unwashed unbelievers or the demoniacs. The people who didn't follow Jesus were the people who were compliant and competent. Here's an example in Mark chapter 2, where it says this: on the Sabbath, he was going through the grain fields, and as they made their way, his disciples began to pluck heads of grain. And the Pharisees were saying to him, "Look, why are they doing what is not lawful on the Sabbath?" And so Jesus gives them an example out of the life of David about how David disobeyed the Sabbath in order to save the lives of his men. But he comes down to this in verse 27, Mark 2:27. And he said to them, "The Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath. So the Son of Man is Lord even of the Sabbath." Now, Jesus was not obliterating the Sabbath. Jesus was not saying, I have put aside the law. Jesus came to say, I am going to fulfill the law, the spirit of the law. You know, my inner Pharisee wants to keep the rules. My inner Pharisee wants to look humble while actually being prideful about the fact that I'm not like those other people. Well, that's exactly what was happening in the New Testament with Jesus. I know that I need to confess frequently that it's not my performance that commends me to God. It isn't my rule keeping that makes me an avid follower of Jesus. It isn't my legalism or my competence with the Word of God that is going to sow the seed of the gospel in other people's lives. It's only going to be the Spirit of God. So I want to ask you today, are you following Jesus? Or are you following a caricature, a rule book that looks a little bit like Jesus, but isn't really free and flowing and generous like him? It lacks the grace that he came to give. Well, I know that many times in my life, I've been a Pharisee. I've been compliant and competent, thinking that God was pleased with me. I know today that following Jesus is much more free than that, but it's also much more transparent. And I need to confess that on a regular basis. How about you? Are you really following Jesus, or are you following just the rules? Let's look at that today, and let's follow him. God bless you.